I'm 100% convinced that this is going to be one of the strongest builds in Borderlands 4. This is Max Overdrive for Rafa. This build maximizes Rafa's Overdrive, giving us about 3 times more benefit from every Overdrive passive. The passive Temerario on its own gives us 150% more damage, and that's just scratching the surface. We also get a ton of movement speed, which means we're going to be able to run around like crazy. The build also has insane damage and survivability. So sit back, relax, put this video on your other monitor if you want, and I'll explain every detail of the build to you. But first, if you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let me break it down for you. This build utilizes Rafa's passive called Overdrive. The way this works is that whenever we activate our skill, which is Peacebreaker Cannons, it's also going to activate our Overdrive. The Overdrive is going to give us passive benefits, such as damage and movement speed, and the timer will not expire as long as we have our Peacebreaker Cannons down. So the gist of the build is that we're using Peacebreaker Cannons in order to activate our Overdrive, and our Overdrive is activating a ton of benefits on our build, which are being increased by passives that make it more effective. That's the short and sweet, but now let me get into the detailed version. And before I start, I should probably mention that I plan to update this build continuously, so make sure you guys drop a favorite, and check back occasionally if you want updates. So as I mentioned, the build's utilizing Overdrive, and Overdrive offers passive stats on its own, but as you'll see in the tree, we're getting a lot of different things that are called Overdrive skills, and these will all be affected by our bonuses that increase these benefits. In fact, I made a list at the bottom of the guide here, and these are all of the benefits that we're getting an increased amount of. So rather than 10% damage, we're getting about 30. Rather than 50%, we're getting about 150. For the shield recharge and delay, we're getting about 120. Tons of damage reduction, and we have option for more, and on and on. So let me go through them individually. Now, based off the setup of the build, I recommend guns that work with running around and spraying and praying. However, you could adjust the build slightly if you prefer aiming down sights. So for our action skill, we're going with the Peacebreaker Cannons. I opted for these for 2 reasons. One, I like this augment here because it gives us ammo regeneration, and that's going to stack with our other ammo regeneration that we're getting in this other tree, which means less time reloading and more time shooting. But the other reason I opted for this one is because of this passive here. So what Jack does is whenever Rafa damages an enemy with a skill, aka our Peacebreaker Cannons, we're getting stacks up to 20 stacks. And these stacks are increasing our Overdrive effectiveness. So if you do the math, that's 50% more at max stacks. And I think Peacebreaker Cannon is going to be our best way to stack that quickly. The other really important component is Soltado. This passive is doubling our Overdrive bonuses. So not only are we increasing by 50%, but we're also doubling as well. Now, what is that doubling? It's doubling our shield barriest with the shield recharge rate and delay. It's giving us damage reduction with Resiliencia, and this can go up even higher. We have the option of going with Barrage, which will increase our splash damage. So if it's applicable, you definitely use this. However, I personally am not planning on using splash weapons, so I went into Overdrive. But either one can work. It also affects Devil May Care, which gives us movement speed and health regeneration. And you'll see down below when I look at Specializations that we can get some bonuses for movement speed. As I mentioned before, Temerario is giving us 150% more damage. Now this does come with less weapon handling, but I'm planning on spraying and praying, so that won't matter anyways. But we do have an answer to that with our Al Centro. This passive increases our weapon handling every second. As I mentioned before, we also have the Overdrive skill for ammo regeneration, and another one for fire rate. And if we don't need as much in our cooldown reduction, we're actually going to have even more options. For example, Brain Dump here increases our critical chance, which might be nice since we're praying and spraying, and that's no small amount of critical hit chance. Now the caveat of the build is that we have to maintain our Overdrive, and you can see here that it gives 12 seconds of duration. But we do have increased duration from Everdrive. We can extend the duration with Tuerga, and that's going to be based off critical strikes, so it could be useful for us to go for the Brain Dump. And if we need even more, we can go with Preparado. And actually one step further if we really wanted to. As I mentioned here, there is an option for Now with Caffeine, and that gives you cooldown reduction whenever you use a repair kit, which is basically like a healing potion. So as I mentioned before, with the Bullet Buddy Deluxe, we're getting even more ammo regeneration, and if we activate it, we don't consume any ammo whatsoever. So between this and our Las Jars passive, we're going to have as much ammo as we need. Finally, for our capstone, I went with Volatile Hollow Points because it's the only one we have access to. And I'm not entirely sure if the fire rate on this is fast enough that it will allow us to hit our stacks on Jack very easily. So I'll make that determination when I get hands-on, but just be aware of it and you may want to choose one or the other. But this obviously does more damage, so it's probably the better choice. Now underneath our skill tree here, I went through and I wrote all of the extra details on when you might choose certain passives over others. So make sure you read through this in the written guide if you want more info. For example, we have field repairs here, and I'm not entirely sure yet, but I think field repairs could work into El Valiente's damage, because this gives us increased damage based off of our shields. However, it might cap out at our max shields and not go with the overflow shields. So if that's the case, I might consider going with less in field repairs. However, either way, since El Valiente works when you're at full shields, having some overcap shields is going to work on keeping this up more often. So you have a little bit of leeway with these 3 points in the middle and how you want to arrange those. Also, just so we're covering all of our bases, I also have metal management, and this one's not necessary, but it does give us another option to consume no ammo. So if we're really going for a spraying build and we need the extra ammo management, then metal management is good. If not, that point can easily go into something like El Centro. And then one last passive, we've got Mate. Now at the highest, we can only get 3 points into this if we were to pull some points out of Devil May Care, but we're only really using this to get more cooldown reduction for our skill. So this point isn't necessary if you're hitting your cooldowns already. Same goes for Preparado and for Juarga. So manage those points as you need. For our specializations, we're going with Bullet Train, and this is probably going to be one of our most important ones, because this allows us to hip fire while sprinting, and if you haven't noticed, we have a lot of movement speed in the build, and we can actually add even more movement speed, which we'll probably do if the scaling for the damage is good. I don't know exactly how the scaling works here, but it says 15% when walking, so if we assume that it's based off of our actual movement speed, this could be fairly good. But either way, being able to hip fire while sprinting is extremely nice for running and gunning. We're also using Riddle You This, and whenever we do gun damage, we're gaining a stack of this, and it increases our gun damage. This is another 50% damage that we can get, so definitely an important one. We've also got Bullets Are Scared of Me, which is a 30% damage reduction, and that'll stack on top of our other damage reduction we already have, which means we're barely going to take damage. And then we have I Am a Gun. Now this is pretty nice because we're allowing our Peacebreaker cannons to benefit from 50% of our gun damage, and because we're stacking so much of it, we're actually going to increase their damage by quite a bit. And this is not much investment for this, so definitely worth it. Now if you prefer the ADS playstyle, there is In the Zone, which you can swap out for Bullet Train because they're kind of opposing playstyles. And like I mentioned before, Now with Caffeine if you need the extra cooldown for Peacebreaker cannons. In fact, using Now with Caffeine instead of I Am a Gun might be the way to go, so you can save more of your skill points and put them into other passives. If you couldn't tell already, this build's extremely fast, has insane damage stacking, it's very tanky, and I imagine the run and gun playstyle is going to be hella fun. But make sure you're managing the cooldown on your Peacebreaker cannons as well as the duration, because that's the only thing keeping our overdrive from running off. Now I'm going to play and actually get hands-on, and as I'm playing it, I'll make sure to do any updates I need to try and optimize around cooldowns and duration and that kind of thing. But I'm also going to be adding gun recommendations, gear recommendations of all kinds. So again, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, favorite the written guide, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks for watching.
Subscribe to Scream Heart. He's more than an old fart. He makes lots of fun builds. I promise his streams chill. He should probably be faster. Come watch this disaster.